Shabbat Shalom. A few years ago, before October 7th, I was in Israel for the summer. On my very first night of my trip, I went to see a concert by a famous artist of Mizrahi music. And she sang a few songs, and as she went through it, it just became clear that she was going through a lot. She was struggling. And after a few songs, she started to speak about what she was going through. And she was just saying the country is a total mess. At the time, it was during the judicial overhaul that was tearing the country apart. And she was just saying, seeing homes and within Israel being torn apart and the disagreements, even divorce. And it wasn't just that, it was everything that had been going on in Israel for so long, the tension, the unbearable tension. And then through the course of the concert, people started to talk to her back to her and saying, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay, and sending her messages of love. And she started to sing happier songs and wedding songs, and people started ululating and dancing in the aisles. And she started to speak of faith in this beautiful nation of ours. And they found a way, and somehow it felt like all of us together in this concert were together finding strength and a way through all of it. I remember at the time, it still makes me think of this, it made me think of the last 20, 25 years, 30 years in Israel, and all the times I've seen Israelis just lose their cool, explode because of the tension in Israel. I thought of one of my very good friends who, after moving back there after many years, was driving in Tel Aviv, and because of some ridiculous traffic rule, got a huge ticket. And he just turned to the policeman, he said, I gave 6 years of my life to this country. And he'd led 1,000 troops into Gaza at some point. And the policeman said, okay, let's move ahead. You don't have to get a ticket. Or the many times I saw store owners and restaurant owners suddenly lose it and become full of rage, just tension just blowing up, trying to eke out a living and make life work through everything happening, sending their kids to the army. As you look back at the last 25 years before October 7th, and you say, right, it's true, Israel did not fight a major war in those 25 years. But you call that peace? And they did come so close to peace with the Palestinians in the 90s. And from the Israeli point of view, the Israeli narrative, the whole of Israeli society moved towards peace in the 90s. Israelis were going to Ramallah for jazz. A majority was moving, trying to understand what it would be like to live in peace. And again, from the Israeli point of view, they made two really good offers that were turned down, and it all blew up into the second intifada. Years of terrorism that traumatized a whole generation of Israelis. And when I know Israelis who grew up, or teenagers, or young adults in that period, many of them moved abroad because they say, I do not want to raise my children the way I had to grow up, with buses exploding. And so for most, they just gritted their teeth, and they said, well, the Palestinians don't want peace, and the world will always blame us. Fine. Not fine, but we'll just move on and do what we have to do. And that situation never got resolved and ended up in a terrible stalemate, leaving Israel as even worse, more intense occupier with no easy road out. And just that pot boiling, threatening to boil over, the lid on, with the people with whom they shared the land, suffering so much, and every now and then the whole situation threatening to explode. Then on top of that, there was the other situation. And I remember it was brought home when on our congregational trip, we went to the northern border of Israel to a small kibbutz 8 years ago. And the security person pointed across the valley. He says, there we know our Hezbollah, looking right at us at this very moment, hiding behind those buildings. He said, we panic when we hear noises at night because we think that it's Hezbollah about to break through the floor and take over our villages. And we could see trucks driving. He said, those are Hezbollah trucks right now driving, and those are Hezbollah signs. And it just looked so menacing. And to Americans, it was eye-opening. A few hours from Tel Aviv, from Jerusalem, this whole other world seemed to stretch endlessly beyond the borders into hostility. And there's a visceral feeling of being surrounded. And for Israelis, we knew the impossibility of the whole situation. Even those neighbors with whom there was peace, still unloved, a sense of regular people just wanting shalom v'shalva, wanting peace and quiet, same as everyone else, but that somehow that hostile territory stretched. And everybody knew that a big part of it stretched all the way to Iran. They wanted to open up all those lids of boiling water in the Middle Eastern sun and pour them on the whole situation. And for years, those pots only boiled over a little bit every now and then. But worse than everything was seeing that situation grow worse year after year, the tension ratcheting up higher and higher. Israel surrounded more and more by more powerful adversaries. When ISIS took over Syria for a bit and parts of Iraq, and the Russians coming in, and Hezbollah taking over much of Lebanon, and then Syria becoming a puppet state of Hezbollah and Iran, all the militias, and tiny little Israel trying to live b'sheket, trying to live in peace, with all these pots of boiling water at once, trying to turn the temperature down, letting off some steam, but day after day, that unbearable pressure. And you look back and you say, you call that peace? And yes, on one level, we're taught that peace is an inner state, that there's a world that's always in Shabbat. Olam shekulo Shabbat, says the Talmud. There's a world that's always in Shabbat. And it doesn't matter what's going on in the world, you can always reach that place. But how hard when all the effort keep trying to make the outer conditions also come into peace. And the sages debated the difference between all these different Hebrew words for peace, sheket and shalva and shalom, and which is a deeper peace, which is a real peace that we all seek out so deeply, where there's inner and outer peace, where there's stillness, where we have that space to thrive and feel something deeper without constant worry. And some say actually that shalva and shalom have a similar two-letter root, shin lamed, which is similar to the Hebrew word for taking off. When God says to Moses, take off your sandals. And the peace comes when you're able to take off all your stresses. But some say the peace of shalom is even deeper than that, because there is the shalom, the mem sound at the end, which brings that feeling of wholeness. What Israel has had has not been shalva, has not been sheket, has not been shalom. It's been this uneasy and increasingly difficult stalemate, requiring more and more work, even to keep it at that. And what October 7th really was the beginning of the war with Iran, also an explosion of the situation of the Palestinians, and it showed Israel in so many ways how impossible it is to keep the lids on all those pots. And they could no longer live like that, and something had to be done about the whole situation. And it's why, despite the hardship of those 11, 12 days of war with Iran, of the past 2 years, most Israelis are just gritting their teeth yet again and saying, we don't want another temporary solution, but some real shalom. And this past week, 2 weeks of the beginning of what happened with Israel's strike, and then the US helping Israel in all the uncertainty of who knows what actually happened, who is on whose side, there is for the first time a real hope, at least we hope, of there being real peace. Not forever, but just for some time. In our tradition, in the end, peace is a cosmic state of balance. So we say when we greet another, Shalom Aleichem, or just Shalom. It's what our great ancestors, Abraham and King David and King Solomon, what they sought to bring. It's also one of the names of God, himself, herself. The sages say the peace is the whole purpose of the whole Torah. And they say it's the essence of all the prophetic words and visions, It's what the rabbis meant. And they said the only way to do it is to overcome the inner and outer forces, overcoming strife, social tension, preventing enmity and war. And so out of all of this, we pray that peace actually comes to be actualized, not only for us, but for the whole boiling Middle East, including our immediate neighbors, the Palestinians, and their plight. In the end, each of us are called individually to do what we can to breathe a messenger of peace to the people around us, to our families, to the whole of humanity. Shabbat Shalom.